Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us for Getting on Board with MPI Philadelphia Area Chapter. I'm Christine Golden. I'm your chapter president for the 2024 year, and I am joined today with some wonderful people, including our board of directors, our immediate past president, Brian Follett, our president-elect, Danielle McCauley, and some of our past presidents that you'll hear from directly, Nicole Benner, CMP, Katie Schultz, as well as Jenny Udell. So today we're going to discuss how you can get involved with MPI, possibly being on our next board of directors for 2025, what that means for you and what that means for our chapter. But before we dive into that, I wanted to just share some housekeeping, things that you can save the date for. May 20th and 22nd, we'll be at the MPI World Education Congress in Louisville, Kentucky. If you have not signed up already, you can go to the mpi.org website and certainly register to attend. It's a great opportunity to get some CEUs, to make some wonderful network connections, as well as to experience what MPI has to offer on a global level. Keep your eye out as well for the June 20th save the date for the CMP CMM luncheon. We're hoping to host that in Philadelphia to recognize all of our CMP and CMM members and non-members as well. We're cooking up some great things for this summer. In August, we're hoping to launch a networking social. In September, we'll welcome you back with some education at Bosses Night. And in October, we're going to celebrate our members and our industry partners at our awards of recognition event. I'm very pleased to announce on November 27th, we have just confirmed we will be co-hosting an education breakfast with ILEA Philadelphia. That'll be the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, right before the Philadelphia CVB annual luncheon. So I hope to see you there. I'll tell you a little bit about MPI Philadelphia Area Chapter. We were established in 1978, and we're one of more than 70 chapters and clubs around the globe. We're actually considered a large chapter with more than 250 members, but we're all volunteer run. That's why we need your help to make sure that we are running smoothly and we're meeting our chapter goals. Just so you're aware as well, our fiscal year is now running January 1st to December 31st, which is why our current board has extended their term to the end of this year, and why this new board of directors won't take office until January 1st, 2025. We're going to get into some of that in a moment. So when I talk about what is the volunteer board, that what do we do exactly, right? So you might have seen or attended one of our education events, one of our networking socials, but we do have a core business plan where we aim to offer not only accredited education, but also networking opportunities. So that includes 4 accredited CEU programs that are certified by the Events Industry Council, plus 1 Education Institute, which typically runs between 3 and 4 CEU credits in one program. We also host 2 fundraising/networking events. We like to call them fundraising as well, where we have the opportunity to raise some money for the chapter or the MPI Foundation, and then also help our members connect with one another. In addition to that, we host one member awards event where we recognize all of the wonderful work that our board does, our volunteers, and people in the meetings industry. There are some, I would say, administrative things we have to do. So every month we have a board meeting, and we also have 2 in-person or virtual retreats for the board itself so that we can get together and make sure we are strategizing and reaching our chapter goals. All in addition to that, we have a very robust program where we're trying to also solicit sponsorship dollars to support all of these things as well. As you know, things don't come that cheap anymore, and as prices increase, we do make sure that we have some funding to make sure we're bringing these programs to our membership and hopefully creating those valuable experiences for them. So I'm very pleased to say that we have a full board slate as of last week. So you see on the screen is our volunteer board right now. Some newer members that you may not have yet met. Our new Director of Leadership Development is Romina. We have a new Director of Sponsorship, Danielle, and our very brand new Director of Membership Recruitment, Jacqueline, or Jackie Phillips, as you might have met her before. So these members have committed to give their time to supporting our chapter objectives and goals. And they will be in office until the end of this year, December 31st, 2024. With some caveats that, of course, we just had these newer positions that were open as of last summer, just filled. We are getting on board to make sure that we are closing out this year very strong. So with our board structure, as you saw all those names, so what does that mean for how we are organized? On your screen, you should see our org chart, which includes our Office of the President, the immediate past president, and the president-elect, as well as our vice presidents and the directors that report up to them. We have determined that due to the size of our chapter, each of these directors and VPs is very important to making sure that we are reaching all of our individual objectives based on education and networking needs within our chapter. So you'll see you may have already been part of a committee, for example, or been a committee chair. You've worked with maybe a director that is on the board of directors already. And all of that leads up to the Office of the President. So that little tree growth chart we'll get to a little bit later on in the presentation. But just to give everyone kind of a sense of how all these pieces fit together, and we're going to talk about why that's important as well. So as I was kind of working through what this program was going to look like, I did reach out to our past presidents and to talk through what their experience is of what it doesn't mean to be a volunteer. So I'm going to kick it over to Katie Schultz, since you were a very long tenured president of the chapter and board member, to maybe give us some of your feedback on, what does volunteering mean?
Thanks, Christine. So you've joined MPI, now what? When I first started on the board, I was Director of Leadership Development and Volunteer Recognition. And what myself and Miriam, who is now our VP of Finance, would do is we would basically stalk all of you who first joined MPI. Because once you join an organization as such, you want to be a part of it, obviously. You want to get your return on investment. I'm sure your employer or your boss or whomever also wants to see what sort of return on investment. So the biggest thing you can do is obviously be a volunteer. I mean, we're not asking you to treat it as a second job. As you can see on the slide, it says, we only ask that you have an hour a month to spare to us. Board positions obviously are a little bit more, but as you grow with MPI, joining the board just continues to help you grow. I mean, you get to meet people, you're networking, you're doing skills that you may not do in your job. That's another thing I always ask to people, what do you want to learn? What do you do every day that you don't get to do, that you would love to do? I think I said that right. But, it's something like, say maybe you do like accounting, but your job is planning events all day long when you really don't get to dive into that part of it. Join the finance committee, see what that's all about. I will say I have learned so much more that has helped me in my job, running the sales department and everything. Yeah, I had to know numbers and revenue, but when you do a deep dive into, like your company's P&L, you may not understand it at all. I seriously learned to understand that in creating a budget for the chapter. I did that 2 years in a row. So, it really does help to develop you. It always gives you the opportunity to try something new. Say you volunteer in, special events for a few months, but then you're like, hey, you know what? I do want to meet more people. Jump over to membership, see what that's all about. Learn and grow with us. That's what I always say to people. If you really want to be a part of a chapter, you really need to volunteer to really get a return on investment. So, and it's been fun. I've gotten to meet all these wonderful people that are on here, and you create wonderful friendships and lasting friendships. There's a group of us that brunch once a month, and a lot of them, unfortunately, aren't in MPI anymore. Their lives took them in different directions, mostly, unfortunately, because of the pandemic. But we get together once a month and we get to see each other and chat about our new lives or different things going on. So definitely volunteering is the way to go and grow.
Yeah, and one thing you mentioned too is, you get what you give. So it's the matter of how much you want to learn and how much you can give us. And it's not, maybe an MPI is not going to be your everyday gig because we are all volunteers, which means not paid. And, as Katie said, life sometimes gets in the way and takes us away, but we are here to help and support that growth as well. So in growing, we also have this opportunity once you become a volunteer, if you decide to apply for the board, what does that mean to be a chapter leader? So when I went to Nikki and I said, we worked together for years, you and I were on
Yeah.
committee together, and then on communications together, and then I get to work through your presidency. And I know you've been a great asset to this chapter, and learning from it and having the MPI. Maybe you can explore how MPI has impacted your professional life as well, and then how your leadership has taken you into your next phase of career.
Sure, yeah. Well, first I want to say that this chart, it shows a typical progression from a committee member to president, but there are very many ways that you can take on the mantle of leadership that don't necessarily follow this progression. Many of you may have some of that like lower level committee experience or even that higher level experience, either personally on another, from another professional association or professionally within your job. So, don't think that you have to follow each of these steps in succession in order to become a leader. Because regardless of how you do all these steps, this is that steady progression allowing you to grow into leadership, but also learn how MPI Philadelphia functions. When you progress through this path, either organically or, through different ways, you're just more likely to discover new ways of doing things that can serve the chapter, and you gain confidence both in your leadership skills, in your voice, feeling like you can and should lead. To that point, personally, that is how I'm sitting in this job. I've never really had any direct reports. And when I interviewed for this position, I'd be having at least two, if not three. And, the person interviewing me said, well, what experience do you have being a team lead? And I said, well, I've chaired multiple committees with volunteers who are choosing to be there, and you have to inspire them because you don't have the inspiration of a paycheck. So I was able to leverage my experience starting as a committee member with the communications committee, and then taking on the MPI Eye to Eye, which was a magazine. We used to publish a quarterly magazine, actual print in the mail, because I'm that old. But I remember back in my day. In any event, then eventually I stepped up onto the board, and then I served throughout a variety of different positions: education, Marcom, and then leadership development, then Office of the President. So, but if we can go to the next slide. I've always found it a little nerdy and interesting that the concept of giving back and gratitude for your talent is something that we see in religion, as we can see from the first quote, political theory, which we can see from the second, and in nerd culture and art and entertainment. I think, while I'm being a little bit flip with these quotes, I do think it says something about leadership, that it's something that we feel called to do, and then it's something we become. You don't need to have the title of leader to lead. I find it to be a tautology, in that if you think you are a leader, you then are a leader. You don't have to have a title to take that on. You just wake up one day and you say, I want to do this. I will say, though, titles are important. They demonstrate professional and personal growth. They're necessary sometimes to progress in our careers. Sometimes we need to demonstrate our competency in this area, similar to my progression, where by using my leadership expertise and experience from being on the board of directors, I was able to translate that into my professional life. So we aren't always given the opportunity in our day-to-day jobs. So we can look to MPI and our volunteer work to take on those roles and responsibilities may not otherwise be available to us in those other areas of our lives. And, I find that these skills translate, right? We gain a confidence in our ability to see the challenge, and then we find a way to overcome it. And then one day we kind of look around and we're like, oh, I'm a leader. But plus, you are getting that growth and expertise and experience in a safe environment, because the chapter gives you the opportunity to learn, grow, and most importantly, make mistakes. And from our perspective, from the chapter's perspective, mistake is a potential case study and not a fireable offense. So I guess, to step back, in my opinion, being a leader means seeing what needs doing, creating a plan to get it done, gathering resources and then the support to do it, and then just doing it. Sometimes it looks like telling other people what to do. Sometimes it means jumping in the trenches with your team and working together. And sometimes it just means finding resources and removing obstacles so your team can progress forward. When thinking on taking leadership roles in the chapter, I like to think about it through the lens of goals and objectives, right? I think that Christine mentioned this, right? Like, did your organization or did your boss set goals for you as a condition of your membership support? When you think about where you want to be in the next 5 to 10 years, what you want to be when you grow up, right? What are the skills you'll need when you get there? And where are the current gaps between where you're sitting now and where you need to be qualified for that role? So, what do you want to show your organization that you've achieved on your next performance level to demonstrate why you should get that raise or promotion? Once you've identified these gaps or goals, the next step is really to reach out to chapter leadership and find out what opportunities are available, because many of the opportunities that we have will match those goals. So if you share that with leadership, they'll tell you how best to proceed, and they can kind of do that matchmaking for you. I'm going to turn that back over to the rest of, you've heard me talk long enough.
Well, I think that's a great segue too on why it's important not only for the chapter but for development too. And when I was talking with Jenny about what that means as far as developing one's own goals and objectives and trying to figure out how that might lean into MPI and the work that we do. So Jenny, could you talk us through, your experience with MPI and what you see as the opportunities for the board members, future board members?
Yeah, of course. My experience is not unlike Nikki and Katie, and I'm sure everybody else on the board. I was a member of MPI for a really long time. I'm not sure I even want to think about it. But it was very late into my MPI membership, several years before I was tapped into volunteering. And then someone came up to me and said, I'm going to nominate you for the board. And I was like, oh, me, I can do it. Okay, I'm going to try. And I had the best time, and I learned so much about myself as a team member and as a team leader on the board, that it really prompted me to to grow into and to find the direction that I have today, which is very much focused still in the hospitality industry, but also in coaching individuals and teams from the dynamics perspective. So there are a couple of things. So I guess going back to what I think was it Katie or Nikki that was talking about ROI, the ROI, Katie. So yeah, the ROI was totally learning about myself and figuring out what direction I wanted to take my career and further education for MPI. Or anyway, sorry. So what I wanted to talk about was learning about what it means to be a team member, which was the biggest thing I got from volunteering with MPI is that when you're part of a team, sometimes you get caught up in what, on one side of it, what is it that I'm bringing to the team, and am I contributing that? Am I really giving all of my strengths? When sometimes what you really need to ask is what does this team need from me? So if we're looking at the board and looking at those open positions, maybe finance isn't my favorite thing to do. This is actually my own personal experience. I did not think of myself as very strong in finance, but we needed a VP of finance. And I said, all right, I'm going to figure out how to do it. I'm going to do my best. And my team, my board is going to provide me grace because they know I'm figuring it out as I go along. And they did, and it was great. It was one of the best roles I served. I learned so much. It supported my work in my small business, and yeah, that piece was amazing. I also had several experiences where I was able to look at, again, what the team needs from me. And it would be this like little thing that maybe I really don't like doing, but I know I'm good at it. So, hey, I'm going to jump in and I'm going to make sure everyone's staying on topic, even though I'm coming across as that person that's like picking out you two over there that are talking about something else, or picking at you over here who's going on for too long. I was very good at bringing everybody back to focus on what needed to be done. And turns out that's what the team needed to actually accomplish our goals. So you learn, yes, how an organization at this level can operate. You gain opportunities to, as Nikki said, lead where you otherwise might not be able to lead in your own job, so that you can strengthen your resume that way. But you also learn a lot about yourselves, what yourself. I only have one self. Oh my goodness. You learn a lot about yourself, what your strengths are, what you can bring to the table, how you can bring that to the table, and how that supports the teams that you're on and want to be on. So in my very roundabout way, yes, there you go.
I think you hit every sort of aspect that we were going for too, and tying it all together is like the experiences that you had with MPI, and then also what you shared about, you know, your day job and your schoolwork of being that team leader. You don't even sometimes realize that you're that person, but when you see that need and you can step in and you can practice those skills. So we're hoping that through this info session and through volunteer work that we get more people to try us out with MPI, you know, step up to the plate, get on board with us and try to stretch some of those soft skills that you might have. And before I get into the nitty gritty, I don't know if Danielle or Brian, if you have anything to add here. Not yet. I know Danielle, Katie and Brian are sharing an office right now, but I wanted to highlight Brian because he is our immediate past president and is the what I'm calling the NOMCOM, the nominating committee chair, who will be reaching out to anyone that has either self-nominated or nominated a peer for this process.
Yeah, and if anyone has any questions about, you know, aside from, you know, the great presentation that we're going through right now, you know, and want a sidebar about, you know, really the commitment, or if you're nervous, you know, I was nervous when I first joined the board, but we've got great support. You know, we're all a new board member once before and know what it's like, you know, we're here to get you through it. And I mean, I've gone through some stuff at work where other people have picked up and helped me out, and vice versa. And so, you know, we're all here to support each other. We're doing it for our chapter. We love our chapter. And you know, take the next step and become a board member is it's a great path to go down, for me at least, and I think for everybody on the call too, that's a board member or a past board member. But yeah, so nominations are the application's out. Interviews will be in the next, towards the end of the month. Yeah, so even if you, and I know, you know, who's on the call, but if you know someone who might be interested, nominate them. You know, to nominate someone else says that, you know, you have confidence in someone, that they can do well and serve on the board.
I would say it's also, I was nominated and I never would have nominated myself because I never thought of myself as being able to hold this position. So it's also, say it's a great thing to do for some people.
I was going to add something similar to what Jenny just said. I think that if you are interested in the slightest in joining the board, please nominate yourself or reach out to someone on this panel or this call, or someone that you know in MPI, ask more questions, maybe get nominated like Jenny was, but I think if you have that inkling in your mind, lean into it. It's a great team to be a part of, and I think we can all say you've heard the growth experience that everyone's had personally and professionally. Just the network itself that you create in this organization is incredible. So I really challenge you to nominate yourself or a friend if you're on this call. If you're not, if you're listening to the recording, and you're like, oh, this sounds great, it is. Please come be a part of it. And if you come on, we would love to have you and support you in whatever capacity that looks like for you. It's really exciting to have these past presidents on the call and have you all listen. So once again, please reach out to any of us if you have questions. We're here to support and answer those questions for you.
Exactly. And I just really quick wanted to highlight some of these dates that you see on the screen. Some of these are from our policy and procedures. Some of these are given to us by Global. So our idea is to have our full slate ready to rock and roll to the current board of directors for approval by June 20, and then sending that out to our entire MPI membership by July 1. Per our policies, we do give our membership 30 days to contest the slate. If there's no questions or comments, that goes to MPI Global by August 1st of this year. And that new calendar is because of our fiscal year change. However, this new board won't take over until January 1st, 2025. So if you think right now isn't quite, the right time at work, hey, you won't really have to do anything until later this year. And as Danielle and Brian said, if you have any questions, that's what we're here for, to figure out how to make sure that you can get the most out of your membership with MPI and then hopefully grow within our chapter as well. So all that being said, you can apply for yourself. You can nominate a friend. Even if you don't know if they're a member or not, just nominate them. We'll figure that out on the back end. So if you scan this QR code on the screen, that should take you over to our MPI website where we have a page dedicated to board nominations. There's also job descriptions on there as well. And then that timeline that I just shared on the previous slide. If you have any questions, the Office of the President is here, as well as the rest of the board, to hopefully walk you through that. And we're going to leave this screen up in case anyone has any questions before I go into our closing slide. So I have the chat open, but anyone feel free to come off mute or put your questions in the chat. No questions yet, but I did want to actually also explain that anyone on our current board theoretically could also reapply for next year's board. Sometimes we do have those conversations where if somebody feels like they just got their feet wet in their position and they're ready to rock and roll for a second year, we can nominate them into the same role. But there are some rules that Global has given us now that you can only be in one role for 3 consecutive years. You can only be on the board for so long, et cetera. Not that anyone's really auditing us, but we do like to make sure that other people have the opportunity to step up and try out this leadership position and support this organization. With the exception of the Office of the President. So I'll take you through that trajectory as you become the president-elect. Your second year, you're chapter president, and then your third year, you're immediate past president. So this is Brian Follett's last year on the Office of the President. So thank you, Brian, for your service. And I will step into that role in January, which I'm rather excited about. But with that comes great responsibility, as Nikki said too. So there are other things that each of the board positions, if you read those job descriptions, we all have our sort of to-do tasks to make sure that this chapter is running. On a few slides ago, you saw that we are a top performing chapter, and that is because we have achieved all of these metrics that Global is actually looking at. So the number of members that we have, our retention rate, the wonderful education feedback that we get, all those lead up to making sure that we are a stellar chapter and delivering great experiences for our members, because it is not cheap to be an MPI member. It's sometimes not inexpensive to even come to meetings. So we know that this is a big, not only time commitment, but financial commitment as well. But we want to make sure that we are still growing the hospitality industry in Philadelphia. Any other thoughts from the panel or from our guests? Questions? No, not yet. I do want to just thank our chapter sponsors. These are some folks and organizations that have supported us through the entire 18-month year so far: Kalahari Resorts and Conventions, Wind Creek Bethlehem, Valley Forge Tourism and Convention Board, Caesars Entertainment and Harrah's, as well as EVE Talent and Mid-Atlantic Events. They are huge supporters of our chapter, and we could not have run all of our events and have these meetings without them. So if there are no other comments for the good of the cause, I just want to thank everyone for your time today. Thank you to our panel, Katie Schultz, Nicole Benner, Jenny Udell. Thank you to Brian and Danielle for being my co-hosts. And hopefully we get those applications in, spread the word, and we're here if you have any questions. So thank you.